Okay, I want you to picture a fortress. But I don't mean the old school kind, with stone walls and a moat.
Right, no alligators.
No alligators, exactly. Yeah. I mean a modern, sort of claustrophobic, technological fortress. We're going to the Antwerp Diamond Center in Belgium, and this place, it isn't just a building. It's more like the heart of the entire global diamond trade.
It really is. It's kind of the bank for the banks. If you were to walk down the main street there, the Pelican Strut, you're walking through probably the most capital-dense square mile on the entire planet.
Wow.
Billions, literally billions of dollars in loose stones, gold securities. It all moves through just a few city blocks every year.
And right in the middle of all that, 2 floors underground, is the Halt. Now, when I was reading through the sources for this deep dive, I kept trying to get my head around just the sheer intimidation factor of this thing. This wasn't just a locked door. It was a security system designed to be, I don't know. It was built to basically scream at you, don't even bother. We're talking about a lock with 100 million possible combinations. 100 million. Then you've got seismic sensors, Doppler radar, infrared heat detectors, magnetic fields. It honestly reads like the spec sheet for a missile silo, not a place that holds jewelry.
It's a concept in security we call defense in depth. And the whole idea is that you don't just rely on one big lock. You have these overlapping layers of surveillance, and each layer is designed to cover the blind spots of the one before it. So it's designed to defeat not just, a sledgehammer brute force, but also really sophisticated technical attacks. It was, for all intents and purposes, considered completely impenetrable. The insurance companies thought so, the security firms that built it.
Exactly.
Everyone.
And yet, that word impenetrable, it's almost like a dare in this world, isn't it?
It's like waving a red flag.
It is. Because on this one quiet weekend, February 2003, all that arrogance just got completely checked. Hard. A crew of Italian thieves. They didn't just break in, they sort of surgically dismantled the whole system. They walked into that vault and then walked out with over $100 million in loot. And the thing that just blows my mind, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this today, is how they did it. They didn't use C4. They didn't do some Hollywood-style rappel down an elevator shaft.
No, nothing like that.
They used hairspray. They used styrofoam. They used tape.
It is a complete masterclass in lateral thinking.
Wow.
They looked at this multi-million-dollar digital security grid and found all the analog loopholes.
But, and there's always a but in these stories, for all that genius, for all of the incredible precision, they were brought down by something so ridiculously stupid, so mundane that it almost hurts to talk about.
The contrast is it's jarring. You've got this Einstein-level planning on a Friday and then a Three Stooges-level mistake on Monday.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We've got the police reports, the court docs, the investigative journalism. We're going to dissect the heist of the century. We really need to understand the mechanics of how this crew, the School of Turin, pulled it off, and then we need to get into the psychology of the crash.
Right.
But let's start with the target itself. Help me understand what they were actually walking into, because vault is such a generic word. Paint me a picture of the physical space.
Okay, so to really get the difficulty, you have to understand the geography first. The Antwerp Diamond Center is at 911 Schipstraat. The vault itself is 2 levels below the street.
2 floors down.
2 floors down.
Yeah.
And that alone is a massive deterrent. It immediately removes the possibility of a ram raid. You can't just drive a truck through the wall because the wall is backed by tons and tons of Belgian earth.
Right, so you have to go down. You can't go through. You've got to enter the building's own ecosystem.
Precisely. And once you're down there, you face the vault door. And this thing is a beast. It's basically a massive steel plug. And like you said, it had that combination lock with 100 million variations.
Let's just pause on that number for a second. 100 million.
It's staggering. If you tried one combination every single second, 24/7, no sleep, it would take you more than 3 years to try them all.
So guessing is out. Brute force with a computer is out.
Completely out. You just don't have that kind of time on a weekend. But the door is just the physical part. The real problem for any thief is the electronic nervous system protecting it.
The sensors.
The sensors. And this is where the story really shifts from being about thieves to being about engineers.
Let's do it. I want to get into the weeds here because the sources list all these sensors, but I want to know how they actually work. Let's start with that magnetic field. The reports say there was a magnetic field on the vault door. What does that even mean? Is it like a sci-fi force field?
Not quite, but almost as effective. It's based on what's called a B-stable switch mechanism. So think of it like this. You have two very heavy-duty metal plates. One is mounted on the door, the other on the door frame.
Okay.
When the door is closed, these plates are just millimeters apart. When the alarm system is armed, a powerful magnetic field is generated between them, locking them together conceptually.
So they're kind of magnetically talking to each other.
Exactly. And the system is constantly monitoring that magnetic bond. If the bond is broken, say, because the door opens even a tiny bit, the circuit trips and the alarm goes off.
But what if you just, I don't know, cut the wire to the sensor?
Ah, that's the clever part. In a movie, yeah, that might work. But in a high-end system like this, no way.
Why not? If you cut the wire, the signal stops. Doesn't that just kill the alarm?
You'd think so, but these systems use something called end-of-line resistors. The alarm panel is constantly sending a tiny electrical pulse down the wire to check if the sensor is still there. It's expecting a very specific amount of electrical resistance coming back.
A handshake, basically.
It's a constant handshake. If you cut the wire, the resistance goes to infinity. The alarm screams. If you try to short the wires together to bypass it, the resistance drops to zero. The alarm screams. It needs to see that one. Very specific, steady value.
So you can't cut it and you can't hotwire it. You somehow have to maintain that perfect magnetic field while physically moving the door that's creating the field. That sounds impossible.
It should be. And that's just the first layer. Let's say just hypothetically you defeat the magnet and you get the door open. You're now standing in a little room just before the vault, the antechamber.
Okay.
You are immediately hit by the seismic sensors.
And these are just listening for vibrations.
Yep, they're what are called piezoelectric sensors, and they're embedded right into the concrete floor and the walls. They can detect the high-frequency vibrations from drilling, hammering, even a thermal lance. Honestly, if you drop a wrench, the floor hears it.
So you have to be lighter than air.
And even if you manage that, you've still got the Doppler radar.
Right, Doppler. I know that from the Weather Channel. It's tracking rain clouds. What's it doing inside a diamond vault?
It's the same principle, just a different application. It's a volumetric sensor, so it floods the entire room with radio waves, usually microwave or ultrasonic frequencies. These waves bounce off the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and they return to the sensor. The sensor then measures the frequency of that return signal.
The Doppler shift, like when an ambulance siren changes pitch as it drives past you?
Exactly like that. If the room is empty, the frequency of the waves comes back unchanged. It's static. But if an object, say a thief, moves into that field, the waves bounce off that moving object. The movement compresses the waves, which changes their frequency. The sensor detects that tiny shift and triggers the alarm.
Wow. So it doesn't matter if you're silent. It doesn't matter if you're floating. If you have mass and you move, you're displacing waves. You can't hide from radio waves.
You really can't, and we're still not done.
Yeah.
After that, you've got the infrared detectors,
Heat sensor.
passive infrared sensors, or PIRs. They're not projecting anything. They're just looking for black body radiation, heat. The vault is a cold room. You know, it's all steel and concrete. A human being is basically a 98.6-degree radiator walking around. You step in there, and to that sensor, you look like a flare gun going off in a pitch-black cave.
Okay, let me just recap this nightmare scenario for a thief. You've got a lock with 100 million codes. You have a magnetic seal you can't break without tripping a very sensitive circuit. The floors can feel you drop a pin. There's radar that sees you move and thermal eyes that see your body heat. And on top of all that, there's a private security force in the building and a police station right around the corner.
Correct. It's a system designed on paper to be absolutely perfect.
And yet this guy, Leonardo Notarbartolo, and his team, they looked at this insane list of specs and just said, yeah, we can take that. So that brings us to the man himself. Who is this guy? Because he doesn't strike me as a brute force kind of criminal.
No, not at all. Notarbartolo was a career thief, but he had a very specific style. He was a charmer. He was a salesman. In the world of heists, we kind of differentiate between technical hacking and social engineering. Notarbartolo was an absolute grandmaster of social engineering.
The long con.
The longest con. I mean, most heist crews will case a joint for a week, maybe a month if they're really careful. Notarbartolo rented an office in the Diamond Center 2.5 years before the robbery.
2.5 years. That is just, it's incredible discipline. Think about the overhead. Paying rent in the Antwerp Diamond District just to maintain a cover story.
It was a long-term investment. And by renting that office at 911 Shoepstraat, he bought himself a whole new identity. He wasn't some suspicious Italian guy loitering in the lobby. He was Mr. Notarbartolo, a respectable diamond merchant. He had a tenant ID card. He had a key to the front door. He had a legitimate reason to be there at all hours of the day and night.
And that kind of access is what kills a security culture, isn't it? Because once you're seen as one of us, people just stop looking at you.
That's it exactly, the gray man theory. You just become part of the background radiation of the building. He'd say hello to the guards every morning. He'd complain about the weather. He'd grab a coffee. He established a pattern of behavior that was so boring, so utterly predictable, that he became invisible.
But he wasn't just drinking coffee and making small talk. He was using that access to do some very serious reconnaissance.
Oh, absolutely. He was mapping the place in his head. And because he had a rented office, he was also entitled to a safe deposit box inside the vault.
The Trojan horse.
That was his Trojan horse. It gave him a legitimate reason to walk into the vault area again and again and again, over months, over years.
So he's inside the belly of the beast. What's he looking for on these visits?
Everything. He's clocking the guard shift changes. He's looking at where the security cameras are pointed, and more importantly, where they aren't pointed. He's timing how long it takes for the vault door to close. But there was one piece of data he just couldn't get by watching. He needed the combination to the vault.
And you can't just stand over the guard's shoulder and watch him dial in the code. That's way too obvious.
Way too obvious. So they turned to technology. And this is one of those details that sounds like it's straight out of a movie, but the police evidence confirms it happened. They decided they needed to install a camera inside the antechamber, positioned right above the vault door.
Okay, but this is 2003. Cameras weren't exactly microscopic yet. And how do you power it? How do you get the footage? You can't just run an extension cord down the hallway.
No. And this is where the real ingenuity comes in. They built a custom surveillance unit inside a fire extinguisher.
A fire extinguisher?
A standard red industrial fire extinguisher.
Eh.
They hollowed it out. Inside, they mounted a tiny high-resolution pinhole camera and a transmitter. They just walked in, swapped the real extinguisher on the wall for their spy extinguisher, and mounted it right near the vault's combination wheel.
That is unbelievably bold. I mean, what if there was a fire?
Hey, then the jig is up. But it was a calculated risk. The camera was perfectly positioned to look down at the dial of the combination lock. So every time the guards opened the vault, they'd spin the wheel, and the camera would record the sequence.
But wait, you said the combination has 100 million possibilities. Even if you can see the numbers, isn't the precision required to dial it in incredibly high?
It is. The camera probably didn't give them the exact code down to the last micron, but what it did was narrow the field significantly. It gave them the sequence of turns. Left 3 times, right 2 times, left again. It gave them the rough stopping points. So it turned a 1 in 100 million problem into maybe a 1 in 10 problem, which a truly skilled safecracker can work with.
Okay, so Notarbartolo provides the access and the intel, but he's not the one who's going to be bypassing the Doppler radar. He needs a team. And the team he built, I just love the name the police gave them, the School of Turin.
It sounds like a Renaissance art collective, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. But these guys were artisans of a completely different kind. Let's break down the roster, because the level of specialization here is fascinating. It wasn't just, 5 guys with crowbars. It was a surgical team.
Absolutely. First, you have the guy they nicknamed the Genius.
Elio Denorio.
Right. Police are pretty sure this was Elio Denorio. And his nickname wasn't ironic. The guy was an electronics wizard. He specialized in alarm bypasses. He didn't just know how to cut wires. He understood the logic boards, the resistance values, the frequencies of the sensors. He'd been linked to other sophisticated robberies where alarms were just disabled without ever triggering. He was the guy who had to defeat that whole electronic nervous system we talked about.
And then you have the monster, Ferdinando Finotto. Now, with a name like the Monster, I'm picturing a brawler, the muscle.
And he was. He was a big, physically imposing guy, which is where the name came from. But he was also a master mechanic and a lockpicker. He was the hands of the operation. So while the Genius was focused on the delicate circuitry, the Monster was handling the physical barriers, the drilling, the cranking, all the heavy lifting. But don't underestimate his finesse. He was apparently an expert electrician, too.
Then we have this almost mythical figure in the group, the King of Keys.
Yeah. And to this day, his identity is the most mysterious. He was an older man. His entire life's work was the forgery of keys. And we're not talking about, duplicating your house key at a hardware store. We're talking about forging these complex, double-bitted, 3-dimensional vault keys from scratch, often just from photos or maybe an impression.
And why was that so important?
Because that massive vault door didn't just have a combination lock. It had a keyway. A huge physical key was required to retract the main locking bolts. You could have the correct code, But without that specific key, the door stays shut. The King of Keys had to create a perfect replica of a key for a mechanism he had never actually seen or touched before the heist.
That feels like a dying art form.
It is.
Yeah.
Digital security is taking over, but back in 2003, a master key forger was worth his weight in diamonds. Literally.
And finally, we have Speedy, Pietro Tavano.
Yeah. Notarbartolo's old friend. And honestly, probably the weak link in the chain.
The name Speedy makes me think of a getaway driver, someone fast on their feet.
Or someone who's high-strung. Tavano was anxious. He was paranoid. He was a longtime friend of Notarbartolo's, and he was brought in for logistics and muscle. But he just didn't have the icy veins of the other guys. And as we're going to see, his psychological fragility is what ultimately brings the whole house of cards down.
Okay, so the team is set. The genius, the monster, the King of Keys, Speedy, and Notarbartolo, the architect. It's the weekend of February 15th, 2003. The Diamond Center locks up for the weekend. The streets of Antwerp go quiet.
And the operation begins.
Walk us through the how. This is the part I really want to visualize. They're at the outer perimeter. They get into the building, probably using Notarbartolo's access card through a garage or a side entrance. Now they're facing those sensors. Let's go back to the hairspray. The genius is staring at a thermal and motion sensor. How does a can of, hair product defeat a piece of high-tech surveillance?
It's all about understanding the physics of the lens. The sensor sees the world through a special lens that allows infrared or visual light to pass through. So Notarbartolo, during one of his many reconnaissance visits, had managed to spray those sensors.
Wait, he did this before the heist?
Yes, weeks or months before. Imagine the nerve that takes. He's standing there in the hallway, maybe pretending to tie his shoe or clean his glasses, and he just gives the sensor a quick spritz. The hairspray dries clear. It creates this very thin, transparent film over the lens.
So the guards walking by would never see it?
Never.
Yeah.
But that film has different refractive and insulative properties than the air. It basically acts like a cataract on the sensor's eye. It blurs its vision. It doesn't blind it completely, because that might trigger a tamper alarm, but it dulls the sensitivity just enough that it can't detect the subtle changes of a person moving in the dark. It just raises the threshold of what the sensor considers movement.
So they essentially sedated the sensors. Okay, that gets them past the outer eyes. Now for the big boss battle. The magnetic field on the main vault door. We talked about how you can't cut the circuit, so how in the world do you open a door that is magnetically sealed to its own frame?
This, to me, is the most brilliant part of the entire heist. The genius realized that the sensor isn't smart. It only detects the distance between the two plates. It doesn't actually know where those plates are in space, only that they're touching.
Okay, I think I follow.
So in the days leading up to the heist, again, using Notarbartolo's legitimate access, they went in and tampered with the mounting bolts. They just slightly unscrewed the bolts holding the magnetic plates to the door and the frame, just enough so they were loose.
Wouldn't unscrewing a bolt on a vault door trigger a seismic sensor? Or some kind of tamper switch?
Normally, yes.
Yeah.
But they did this during normal business hours when the seismic sensors are either turned off or set to a very low sensitivity because people are walking around all the time.
Of course, hiding in the noise.
Hiding in plain sight. So the bolts are loose. On the night of the heist, they attach this custom-made aluminum brace to the two plates. They use heavy-duty double-sided tape to stick the plates firmly to this brace. Then they fully unscrew the bolts.
I think I see it now. The plates are now stuck to each other through the brace, but they are no longer physically attached to the door.
Correct. They essentially unplugged the sensor from the door, but kept the circuit itself perfectly intact. They just swung the plates, still stuck together, out of the way, taped them to the wall, and the alarm system was still reading door closed, all secure, because the two magnetic plates were still touching each other in that little aluminum embrace.
It's so simple. It's terrifyingly simple. They didn't hack the software, they just physically moved the sensor so it couldn't know the door had moved.
They hacked the hardware. It's a physical hack, not a digital one.
So the magnetic seal is bypassed. They use the forged key from the King of Keys and the combination from the spy camera to unlock the door. They swing that massive steel slab open, but now they have to actually step inside. And inside, the air is just buzzing with Doppler waves, and the room is being watched by infrared eyes.
This is where the polystyrene comes into play.
The styrofoam shield.
Yes. Try to picture this. A grown man, probably the monster or the genius, is holding a large, rigid sheet of styrofoam in front of his body, and he starts walking into the pitch-black vault.
Why styrofoam specifically? Why not a piece of wood or plastic?
It's about thermal emissivity. Styrofoam is an incredibly efficient insulator. It traps heat. So by holding that shield in front of him, the thief was effectively blocking his own body heat from radiating outward toward the infrared sensor. To the sensor, the styrofoam just looks like the ambient temperature of the room. It's a thermal cloak of invisibility.
Okay, but what about the Doppler radar? The styrofoam still has mass. If he moves, the radar should ping him, right?
This is where their deep knowledge of the specific sensor model comes in. Most Doppler sensors have known blind spots or specific sensitivity thresholds. By moving incredibly slowly, I mean agonizingly slowly, and probably hugging the walls where the wave reflection is less distinct, they managed to creep up on the sensors without triggering them.
So he just inches forward, hiding behind a piece of packing foam until he gets close enough to the sensor. And then what does he do?
He just reaches up and tapes a piece of cardboard or another piece of styrofoam directly over the sensor's face. Once it's covered, it's blind.
And just like that, the multi-million-dollar high-tech fortress is completely offline.
They turned on the lights. They were in.
Now the fun begins, or I guess the hard work begins, because now they're standing in a room staring at 189 locked safe deposit boxes. And they certainly didn't have the keys for those.
No. And this is the part of the heist that is less Ocean's 11 and a lot more construction site. Opening a safe deposit box without a key is just brutal physical work. They brought a custom-made tool with them. It was essentially a hand-cranked drill press that they could brace against the lockers.
Explain how that worked.
You attach it directly to the lock core. Then you start turning the crank. The device applies an immense amount of torque to the lock cylinder way, more than a human could, enough to physically shear the metal pins inside that are holding it shut. Pop. The lock breaks. You pull the box out.
And they had to do this manually for every single box.
Over and over and over again. Can you imagine the physical exertion? You're 2 floors underground. The air is stale. Your adrenaline is pumping like crazy, but your muscles are burning. They managed to open 109 boxes.
109! That is a lot of cranking.
It's an immense amount of labor. It suggests they were in that vault for hours, and they were just emptying the boxes onto the floor. Loose diamonds, gold, cash, bearer barns. The floor of the vault became this glittering sea of wealth.
And they couldn't take it all.
No way. They physically couldn't carry it. They had to start cherry picking. They apparently left behind solid gold bars because they were just too heavy. They left silver. They were just sweeping loose diamonds into satchels. It must have been a complete frenzy.
So they pack up. They have what they believe is hundreds of millions of dollars in loose, untraceable stones. They clean up their gear for the most part. They grab the tapes from the building surveillance system so there's no video evidence of them coming or going.
Which was smart. They took the actual VCR tapes.
And they leave. They exit the building, get into their car, and drive back to Notarbartolo's apartment in Antwerp. At this point, it's early Sunday morning. The crime is done. They're rich beyond their wildest dreams. They're free.
They are. All they have to do now is drive back to Italy. Simple.
And this is where the entire story just pivots on a dime. Because up until this very moment, they are criminal geniuses. They're legends. And then Speedy gets in the car.
You know, the psychology of the getaway is a fascinating thing. You've just committed a crime that you know is going to be global news. Your heart rate is probably 140 beats per minute, and it just will not go down. The paranoia starts to set in.
And Speedy, Pietro Tavano, is just losing his mind.
He is. He's holding this garbage bag. And inside that bag is all the evidence they couldn't leave behind. They used hairspray cans, the empty rolls of tape, sandwich wrappers from their break, the surveillance tapes they stole.
The plan was to burn it, right? Dispose of it properly.
Or weigh it down and dump it in a deep river somewhere in France. Anywhere but Belgium. But Speedy's looking at that bag, and all he's thinking is, this is a beacon. If the cops pull us over for a broken taillight and find this bag, we are done. He starts begging Notarbartolo to get rid of it.
Just get rid of it now.
Pull over, dump it, right now. And Notarbartolo, maybe he's exhausted, maybe he's just trying to calm Speedy down. He makes the single worst decision of the entire operation. He pulls off the E19 motorway, the main highway that runs from Antwerp to Brussels.
This isn't some remote, desolate wilderness. This is a major European highway.
It's a very densely populated corridor. They pull onto a little dirt track near a small wooded area, and they just throw the bags into the bushes.
They littered. The greatest thieves in modern history, and their downfall was littering.
It's pathetic. It really is. But it gets even worse. The patch of land they dumped it on belonged to a man named August Van Camp. Now, August wasn't a detective. He was just a retiree. And he had one major pet peeve.
Let me guess. People dumping their trash on his property.
Exactly. He was fighting this one-man war against local litter bugs. So he sees these trash bags the next morning. He is furious. He assumes it's just some local kids or a lazy neighbor. He goes out there not to find evidence of a heist, but to find an address on an envelope so he can go yell at someone.
He just wants to send a strongly worded letter.
He wants to give someone a piece of his mind. So he rips open the bag, and he doesn't find kitchen scraps or old newspapers. He finds the shell of a video surveillance system. He finds envelopes stamped with the Antwerp Diamond Center logo. He finds spools of stripped videotape.
Did he even know about the heist yet?
No, that's the crazy part. The heist hadn't even been discovered yet. It was early Monday morning. The bank staff hadn't arrived to open the vault. August Van Camp calls the local police because he thinks maybe some kids stole the video camera from a shop.
So the police come out to investigate a simple littering complaint.
They do. And then, a little later that morning, the call comes in from the Diamond Center. We've been robbed. The police connect the dots almost immediately. Wait a second. We just found a bag full of Diamond Center envelopes out in the woods.
That is just divine intervention levels of bad luck for the thieves.
It's pure chaos theory. So the police recover all the trash, and for them, it's an absolute goldmine. It wasn't just equipment. It was a receipt for the surveillance system they'd bought.
A receipt. You're kidding.
A receipt. And while it wasn't in Notarbartolo's name, it linked back to his immediate circle. But the real smoking gun, and I still can't believe we're saying this, was a sandwich.
The infamous salami sandwich.
A half-eaten salami sandwich found right there in the trash bag.
Why? I mean, why would you put your half-eaten lunch in the evidence bag?
Well, think about it. You're stuck in a vault for 8, maybe 10 hours. You get hungry. You eat. You put the wrapper and the crust back in the bag to keep the vault clean. You're meticulous. You take the bag with you.
And by 2003, DNA forensics were becoming pretty mainstream.
They were. The Belgian police swabbed the sandwich. They got a clear DNA profile. They ran it through the European databases. And because Notarbartolo had a minor criminal record from years before, they got a hit.
Boom. Leonardo Notarbartolo.
The sandwich placed him right at the scene. Or at the very least, it placed his lunch in the getaway car.
So the police know who he is, they have his name, but surely he's long gone. He's in Rio, he's in some non-extradition country, living it up.
You'd absolutely think so. But this is where the arrogance, that same arrogance that built the vault, comes back to bite the thief. The heist was the weekend of the 15th. The trash is found on the 17th. On February 21st, just 5 days after the heist, Leonardo Notarbartolo shows up at the Antwerp Diamond Center.
He goes back.
He walks right up to the front desk.
Why on God's green earth would he do that?
We can only speculate, but remember the long con. He spent 2.5 years meticulously building the persona of a legitimate diamond merchant. If he just vanishes the day after a massive heist, he's basically admitting guilt. He probably thought, if I show up, act shocked and outraged, ask about my own safe deposit box, I'll look like just another victim.
He's trying to brazen it out. Oh my God, I've been robbed too. How could this happen?
Precisely. He had no idea about the sandwich. He didn't know they'd found the trash. In his mind, he was completely clean.
I would love to have seen the detectives' faces.
Can you imagine? The Diamond Detective Squad is there, crawling all over the crime scene, and then the one man whose DNA was on a key piece of evidence just strolls into the lobby. It must have been the easiest arrest of their entire careers.
Excuse me, sir. Is this your Salami?
Essentially, yes. They arrested him on the spot.
So the ringleader is caught. What about the rest of the School of Turin?
The evidence from those trash bags helped track them down. They found phone records, travel documents, all connected to Notarbartolo. Eventually, they managed to catch Speedy, the monster, and the genius. The King of Keys, however, remained a ghost.
He just vanished.
He was never conclusively identified or arrested. The old master, the analog man, he just slipped away.
That feels right somehow. The analog man escapes the digital dragnet. So they all go to trial. We're talking about a $100 million heist. This is one of the biggest thefts in history. They must have gotten life sentences.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But this is Europe, and at the end of the day, this was a property crime. There was no violence, no guns were used, no one was held hostage.
So what's the damage from the court?
Notarbartolo got 10 years.
10 years for $100 million.
The others, Speedy, the monster, and the genius, they each got 5 years.
5 years for $100 million. That math is really disturbing.
It is. It forces you to ask a very dangerous question. Is it worth it?
I mean, if you steal $100 million and serve 5 years, you're effectively earning $20 million a year to sit in a jail cell. That is a better salary than any CEO on the planet.
That's the calculation they must have made. And that brings us to the biggest mystery of all in this case. The loot.
The police have the trash, they have the thieves. Do they have the diamonds?
Not a chance. They found some small amounts of cash and a few pieces of evidence. But the vast, vast majority of that haul, tens and tens of millions of dollars in uncut diamonds, has never, ever been recovered.
So the money is still out there, somewhere.
It is. And this is what leads to all the theories. Notarbartolo, after he was in prison, came out with this wild story. He gave a big interview to Wired magazine. He claimed the entire thing was a setup.
A setup. By who?
He claimed a Jewish diamond merchant hired him to rob the vault. He said the whole thing was a massive insurance fraud scheme.
Rob us so we can claim the insurance money.
That was his story.
Oh.
Notarbartolo claimed that when they got into the vault and started opening the boxes, many of them were already empty. He said they only actually stole about $20 million worth of stuff, and that the other $80 million was already stolen by the merchants themselves before the heist ever happened.
That is a very convenient story for a convicted thief. I'm not the bad guy here. I was the patsy.
It is, and frankly, it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny.
Why not? On the surface, it sounds plausible. Insurance fraud happens all the time.
It fails on the basic economics. I dug into this a bit. The Antwerp Diamond Center vault was not fully insured. In fact, it was barely insured at all.
Wait, what? You put $1 billion worth of goods in a basement and you don't insure it?
Insurance companies are businesses, right? They assess risk. And insuring loose, untraceable stones in a vault that, despite all its fancy security, is a massive target. It's incredibly expensive. The premiums would completely wipe out the merchant's profits. Most of these diamond dealers are self-insured. They rely on the vault's security, not on an insurance policy.
So if there's no big insurance policy, there's no motive for insurance fraud.
Exactly. If the merchants stole their own diamonds, they would just be stealing from themselves. There was no big payout waiting for them.
So Notarbartolo was lying.
Most likely he was trying to confuse the narrative. Or maybe he was trying to send a signal to his buyers, letting them know he hadn't ratted them out.
So where are the diamonds?
And that is the absolute genius of stealing diamonds. If you steal cash, it has serial numbers. If you steal a famous painting, everyone knows what the Mona Lisa looks like. But a raw, uncut diamond is just a rock.
Until you cut it.
Exactly. The professionals, and these guys were professionals, they would have had a fence, a buyer lined up long before the heist. They hand off the bags of stones immediately. The fence takes them to a cutting house. A 5-carat rough diamond gets cut into 2-carat polished diamonds. The shape changes, the weight changes. The entire identity of the stone is erased.
So within a week of the heist, those diamonds could have been sitting in engagement rings in New York, Hong Kong, or Dubai, and nobody would ever know their origin.
Precisely. The School of Turin likely handed off the goods to a Russian or Israeli mob connection almost immediately. The money was wired to offshore accounts. By the time the police were swabbing that salami sandwich, the diamonds were already laundered and back in the global market.
It's terrifyingly efficient.
It really is.
You know, when we look at a story like this, we see the movies, we think of Ocean's 11, we see the glamour. But when you really strip it all down, it's a story about the collision of two completely different worlds. You've got the cold, unfeeling, supposed perfection of the machine. The radar, the magnets, the steel. And then you have the messy, sweaty, anxious reality of the human being.
That's the core of it right there.
Yeah.
The machine actually worked perfectly. The magnets did their job. The radar did its job. But the humans found a way to trick the machine. They used tape and hairspray. But then those very human flaws, hunger, anxiety, arrogance, that's what undid the humans.
The machine didn't catch them. The sandwich caught them.
The human element is always the weakest link in any security chain. You can build the most perfect fortress in the world, but if the guy inside wants to eat some salami or he's too lazy to drive an extra hour to burn the trash, the whole fortress falls.
It's a lesson for anyone in security, really. You aren't defending against robots. You're defending against people, and people are weird.
People are messy.
So Notarbartolo served his time. He got out. Then he got arrested again for not paying restitution to the victims.
It's kind of Kafkaesque ending, isn't it? He couldn't pay them back because he claimed he didn't have the money. But if he did pay them back, he'd be admitting that he had the loot hidden somewhere, so he went back to jail.
A catch-22.
A total stalemate. He's out now, though.
Yeah.
Living in Italy and, presumably living a quiet life.
We're digging up a very valuable box in his backyard.
We can dream.
This story has become such a legend. There are books, documentaries. I read J.J. Abrams wanted to make a movie at one point. Why do we love this story so much? Why do we find ourselves rooting for them? Just a little bit.
I think it's because it was a victimless crime, at least in the violent sense. And it was an intellectual triumph. We love seeing the little guy, even if the little guy is a criminal, outsmart the big, bad, faceless system. The Diamond Center represented infinite wealth and infinite security. And seeing five guys dismantle it with household items, there's something deeply satisfying about that.
It kind of validates our belief that human ingenuity can still beat technology, even if that ingenuity is, used for theft.
And let's be honest, the trash ending adds this layer of tragic irony that makes it feel like a Greek play or something. It wasn't the police who beat them, they beat themselves.
So final verdict?
Yeah.
Did they win?
That is the provocative question I want to leave everyone with. Imagine you're offered a job, and the job is this. Go to prison for 5 years. But the day you get out, there's a bank account waiting for you with $20 million in it, tax-free. Do you take that job?
That is a very dark question.
For a normal person, losing 5 years of your life, of your freedom, is a nightmare. But for a career professional thief, that might just be the cost of doing business. It's an overhead cost.
If the money is waiting for them, then yeah. In a way, they won. They beat the system, they served the time, and they still kept the prize.
And somewhere out there, maybe the king of keys is sipping an espresso, smiling to himself, knowing he opened the unopenable door.
And somewhere, August Van Camp is just happy that his woods are clean. Well, that's it for our deep dive into the Antwerp Diamond Heist, a story of genius, physics, and a very, very expensive lunch.
Indeed.
Next time you walk past a motion sensor or you see a fire extinguisher on the wall, maybe give it a second look. You never know what or who is inside. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious and check your trash.